For decades, history told us a simple story. The Vikings reached North America around the year 1000. They stayed briefly, then they disappeared. One landing, one failed settlement, end of story. But that story is wrong, because buried inside the ruins of a collapsed Viking barn in Greenland, archaeologists found something that should not exist. The wood was wrong, the grain was wrong, the species was impossible. It didn't come from Greenland, it didn't come from Scandinavia, and it didn't arrive by accident. This wood came from across the Atlantic, from North America, freshly cut, shaped with metal tools, transported deliberately across thousands of kilometers of open ocean. And it forced scientists to confront a disturbing question. What if the Vikings didn't just reach America once? What if they returned again and again for centuries? Until recently, the Viking presence in North America was treated like a historical footnote. According to textbooks, Norse explorers, led by Leif Erikson, reached a place called Vinland around the year 1000 AD, likely modern-day Newfoundland. They built a small settlement at Los Olmedos. They stayed for a short time, maybe 10 years. Then they abandoned it. Historians pointed to long distances, hostile encounters with indigenous peoples, and limited economic value. The conclusion seemed obvious. The Vikings tried, they failed, they walked away. Even the Norse sagas, which mentioned repeated voyages west to places like Markland, were dismissed as exaggerations, stories stretched by time and tradition. For nearly a century, archaeology appeared to support this version of events. One settlement, one experiment, one brief contact between worlds. But Greenland itself was about to reveal the truth. Viking Greenland had a serious problem: trees. Greenland was nearly treeless, producing only stunted birch and willow, useless for building ships, houses, churches, tools, and furniture. Yet the Norse built all of these things. Entire settlements depended on wood. For generations, scholars offered simple explanations. Driftwood carried from Siberia by Arctic currents, timber imported from Norway, occasional scavenging trips to nearby lands. The mystery appeared solved. But when researchers began systematically examining thousands of wooden artifacts from Norse Greenland sites, cracks appeared in the story. Most of the wood fit expectations, but not all of it. Some pieces simply didn't belong. A team of researchers analyzed more than 5,000 wooden artifacts using modern techniques: dendrochronology, microscopic cellular analysis, genetic identification. What they found changed everything. Among the expected materials were pieces of hemlock, oak, and beech, trees that do not grow in Greenland, do not grow in Scandinavia, and do not arrive naturally by ocean currents. These species grow in North America. Even more shocking, the wood was not ancient driftwood. It was freshly cut. The fibers were intact. Metal axe marks were visible. The logs had been harvested from living trees. This was not accident. This was intention. Someone had crossed the Atlantic to cut these trees and then carried them home. At first, historians wondered if this was evidence of one forgotten expedition, but the dates didn't match. North American wood appeared across multiple Greenland settlements, and not just in the early 1000s. Some samples dated to the 11th century, others to the 12th century, some possibly into the early 13th century. That's centuries after Los Olmedos was abandoned. If the Vikings stopped visiting America around 1020, why was North American wood still arriving in Greenland 200 years later? The only explanation was unavoidable. They never stopped going. This discovery reframed Viking history completely. The Norse weren't explorers making desperate gambles. They were navigators operating a known route. North America wasn't a mystery, it was a resource zone. Seasonal voyages carried crews west to cut timber, gather materials, repair ships, and return home. No permanent colonies were needed. Temporary camps could be dismantled, leaving almost no trace behind. This explains why archaeology found so little and why historians misunderstood so much. The strongest evidence came from an unexpected source: birch bark tar. Vikings used tar to waterproof their ships, and it preserves DNA remarkably well. Scientists extracted genetic material from tar samples found across Greenland. The results were astonishing. The DNA matched forests from the Gulf of St. Lawrence, the Bay of Fundy, coastal regions of eastern Canada. Radiocarbon dating shattered the timeline completely. Some samples dated to before Leif Erikson's famous voyage. Others dated to around 1250 AD. That means Viking contact with North America lasted over 250 years, longer than the United States has existed. Then came the most sensitive discovery of all. Genetic analysis of Norse human remains revealed markers linked to indigenous North American populations. Not in one individual, in several, across different generations. This means Vikings and indigenous peoples didn't just meet once. They interacted repeatedly, trading, clashing, and occasionally forming personal relationships. The sagas weren't exaggerations. They were incomplete records of a much longer story. So why did historians miss this for so long? Because we searched for the wrong evidence. We expected stone cities, permanent towns, colonies designed to last forever. But the Vikings didn't colonize like later Europeans. They operated like modern resource fleets, temporary, mobile, and efficient. When Greenland collapsed due to climate change, disease, and economic isolation, the connection to America vanished, and with it, the memory. By the time Columbus sailed in 1492, the Viking presence in America had faded into myth. But DNA does not forget. It waited, locked inside wood fibers, ship tar, and human remains. And now it tells us something extraordinary. The Vikings didn't just reach America. They knew it, they used it, they returned to it for centuries. And if this much of history was hidden in plain sight, what else is still buried beneath our assumptions? Because history remembers winners, but science remembers everyone.